What famous line was improvised in the 1997 family drama, Soul Food? What did stars Vanessa Williams, Vivica A. Fox, and Nia Long all have in common? What was the movie that Vanessa Williams was working on at the same time that she was filming Soul Food? These and more questions will be answered on
Back Look Cinema, the podcast.
You see, in life we all make some bad choices. My husband was gambling, and yeah, he was bad at it. Like we almost lost this house. But I worked on my hands and knees, cleaning up after white folk, taking in laundry. See, you can do what you have to do to stay strong. Save the family. Even if you stumble trying. Now I'm gonna tell you something. One finger pointing to blame don't make no impact. But you ball up those fingers in a mighty fist, and you can strike a mighty blow. This family got to be that fist.
Hello, my name is Zo. It's spelled Z-O or Z-O for those of you outside of the U.S. Welcome back, friends. This is the 213th episode of Back Look Cinema, the podcast, where we take a look back at the movies of yesteryear, especially the movies of the latter half of the last millennium. If you like what you're about to hear, then please tell your family, tell your friends, and tell your cousins and them. Tell your exes who arrive uninvited into your space, and tell that preacher who inexplicably shows up for your weekly family get-together about Back Look Cinema. There were a slew of black dramas in the cinema in the 90s, like The Wood, Love Jones, The Best Man, and Waiting to Exhale. But this movie, Soul Food, has had a greater impact on me because this is a movie about family, the ties that bind the family together, and the adversity that can break it apart. It reminds me of my own family and the stresses of life that challenges the ability of our family to hold together. One of the key elements of the story is the family Sunday meal, and we used to have a similar tradition from when I was growing up. Our granny used to take us to church, and afterwards we would go to her house for a Sunday meal. It wasn't every Sunday, like in this film, but in my nostalgic recollection, it seemed to happen quite often. Mary Edna Carr was our Big Mama, but we used to call her Granny. She used to counsel us whether we wanted to or not. She would celebrate our victories and comfort us in our sorrows. This was one of those motion pictures within which I can almost see myself on the screen. It's why representation is so important. What are some of the movies that made you feel seen? Hit me up at friends@backlookcinema.com or leave a comment at Backlook Cinema on the social media. But in the meantime, let's take a look at Soul Food from 1997. Big Mama Jo is the center and rock of her family. While the adversities of life challenge the integrity of her family unit, she is strong enough and wise enough to keep her $3 from giving in to their worst impulses. Her oldest, Terry, is the most financially successful, and Terry won't let anyone forget it. Mama Jo's middle child, Maxine, is the strongest willed, who will just as soon fight as she would come to an amicable agreement. Bird is Big Mama's youngest daughter, who doesn't make the smartest of choices. Big Mama does an amazing job managing her daughters, their husbands, and her grandchildren. Therefore, the family's biggest challenge happens when she's not around to give her strength, love, wisdom, courage, and guidance. Soul Food was released September 26, 1997, produced by Fox 2000 Pictures and Edmunds Entertainment. It grossed over $43 million in the US and Canada on a reported budget of $7.5 million. Now, to translate that to today's money, that means that it made over $87 million in the US and Canada. And the budget would have been $50 million. Interestingly, on a recent podcast, one of the subjects came up that it seemed like they're not making a lot of Black films anymore. Like, you don't see a lot of Black films in recent years. Like, you see some, but a lot of those are really big budgets, but you don't really see a lot of smaller budget films. And I think what is happening is that smaller budget films are being like squeezed out of cinemas. So you don't really see that many small budget films, and Black movies kind of live in that small budget space. Like, a lot of times, especially in the 80s and 90s, like one of the biggest budget films for Black cinema would be about around $30 million. Like, that's the most that you could get out of a studio for a Black movie. Unless it was a huge star and it was an ensemble cast and not just like a specific Black culture film. And you don't see a lot of those films nowadays. Nowadays, it's like a lot of those films are showing up on streaming. And that is definitely something worth taking into consideration when we're having this conversation about the changing cinemascape of movies and television. This movie was starring Vanessa Williams as Terry. You may have seen her in Shaft from 2000, or Eraser, or Hoodlum, which I didn't see, which I wish I had seen. Or you may have caught her appearance on Adventures of Elmo in Grouchland. Vivica Fox plays Maxine. You might have seen her in Independence Day or either of the Kill Bill movies. She was also in Batman and Robin, Booty Call, and Chocolate City. What's interesting is that Booty Call is not one of those movies that I ever wanted to see, but I was kind of conned into seeing it by a friend of mine last year. And it was actually a pretty good movie. It wasn't as bad as I imagined it was going to be, and it was really funny. Nia Long plays Robin, also known as Bird, and you might have seen her in The Best Man, Big Mama's House, The Best Man Holiday, a sequel to The Best Man, or Boiler Room. And Nia Long is just one of those faces that I see I see in all types of media. Michael Beach plays Miles, and you might have seen him in Aquaman. Here's something funny. I did see him in Aquaman, but I didn't recognize him. He's also in Saw X, and the role that he played that left the most impact on me was the role he played on Lean on Me. And you can catch that in episode number 18 that we did on this podcast. Mekhi Phifer plays Lynn, and you might have seen him in Honey, Dawn of the Dead, or one of my favorite movies that he was in, 8 Mile. Brandon Hammond plays Ahmad, and you might have seen him in Mars Attacks, The Fan, or Space Jam, and we covered that in episode 31. That was actually my son's choice. And for a young actor, young Mr. Hammond actually carried this movie fairly well. He hasn't really done any huge projects that I can see lately, and he's probably on a lot of television, but he was very impressive, and in a way that you don't see a whole lot of very young actors, you like really carry a film or anything really. He was really good. He really helped gel this movie together. Jeffrey D. Sams plays Kenny, and you might have seen him in Just Right or also Waiting to Exhale. That movie was in episode 97. I did that with Sequoia Holmes, and she has a podcast called Black People Love Paramore. Gina Rivera plays Faith, and you might have seen her in Showgirls or Kiss the Girls. And at last we have Irma P. Hall. She plays Josephine, Big Mama Joseph, also known as Mama Joe. She's been in The Lady Killers, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and Collateral. Soul Food was directed by George Tillman Jr., and you might have seen some of his other fantastic movies, including The Hate U Give, Men of Honor, The Inevitable Defeat of Mr. and Pete, Faster. Faster was a movie starring The Rock, and it was a very different movie. He also did the biopic Notorious for the Notorious B.I.G., and he did another biopic, Big George Foreman, which didn't get as much attention as a lot of his other movies. One of the things that you'll notice about George Tillman Jr. is that the movies he's directed are well acclaimed. Either they're critically acclaimed or they're financially successful, or a combination of both. So he has directed some. He knows how to put a story together. The movie was also written by George Tillman Jr., and he wanted to write a film that was genuine, a genuine film about a heartfelt and modern Black family. And that's what this film represents. And I think he really nailed it. And some of the other movies he wrote was Big George Foreman and this small film called Scenes of the Soul. I don't know if Scenes of the Soul ever ended up in theaters, but those are the two that he actually wrote. The music was composed by Lisa Coleman and Wendy Melvion. Lisa Coleman and Wendy Melvion are better known as the musical duo Lisa and Wendy. They came to notoriety as members of Prince's band, The Revolution, and they recorded Purple Rain with Lisa on keyboards and Wendy on guitar. Since leaving Prince and The Revolution, they formed their own musical duo, recording several albums and also composed music for film and TV, including Dangerous Minds, Joanna Man, Something New, Just Right, and Foolish. And I must have enjoyed their music. It's like a lot of times I don't think about like the soundtrack music unless it's something that's huge, like something like a space opera or something that's like a crime drama or something like that. But I think that the music is important for setting the mood. Sometimes it's just in the background and it gives context for what you're watching. And when it's done right, sometimes you don't even really think about it. It's so in sync with your emotions that you don't have to wonder about how you're supposed to feel about what you're watching. And what Lisa and Wendy did with this movie is that it's so subtle and it's so in sync with what's going on in the movie that it really elevates the film. So they did a fantastic job with this soundtrack, or the musical score. And speaking of soundtrack, this soundtrack is on a completely different level. We have to talk about this outstanding soundtrack by Kenneth Babyface Edmonds. Babyface, a prolific songwriter, singer, producer, and record executive, produced this movie and the soundtrack. He wrote almost half the songs on this soundtrack, including the Grammy Award-winning song, A Song for Mama, performed by Boyz II Men for Best Song Written Specifically for a Motion Picture or a Television Series. The soundtrack peaked at number 3 on the Billboard 200 and was certified 2 times multi-platinum. 2 of the songs were written and performed by Babyface, and they were I Care About You, that he sings with an ensemble band called Milestone, a band that was made for the movie, and a song called I Said I Love You. Some of the songs that were written by Babyface but performed by others were, once again, I Care About You, with his inclusion in the fictional group called Milestone that included his brothers, Kevin and Melvin Edmonds, and those two guys are in a group called After Seven. And it also included brothers Casey and JoJo Haley, and they were in a group called Jodeci, and they formed their own duo called Casey and JoJo. The other songs he wrote were You Are the Man, performed by En Vogue, Slow Jam, performed by Usher and Monica, and Baby I, performed by Tenderoni. Also, Young Girl and another song called I Have Never, both of those songs performed by A Few Good Men. Some other nostalgic songs on this fantastic soundtrack are In Due Time by Andre 3000 and Big Boy, performed by Outkast. Let's Do It Again by Jermaine Dupri and Manuel Seal, performed by Escape. September by Maurice White, Al McKay, and Alice Willis, performed by Earth, Wind, and Fire. No Diggity by Teddy Riley, Chauncey Hannibal, William Stewart, Lenise Walter, Rick Vick, Bill Withers, and performed by Blackstreet. And The Breaks by Robert Ford, Russell Simmons, Larry Smith, James B. Moore, and Curtis Blow, performed by Curtis Blow. And those are the credits. And now I have some announcements. I got some great feedback just recently from the previous episode. So that episode was Beat Street, and the feedback comes off of YouTube. So the first one I want to read comes from @GeorgeHenry1258. And he wrote, Great episode for a largely forgotten movie. I used to watch it every year, but I hadn't in over a decade. I plan on watching it in December. Like you said, it is a Christmas movie. A majority of the film takes place in the holiday season. I said it when it was first released on VHS. I think 1984. So it would have been 13. In regards to fashion, it's a nice transition from the rock star Earth, Wind, and Fire costumes and to a more blue-collar DIY jeans, denim jackets, tracksuits, and the leather bomber jacket. The music is great. Ray Don Chong is beautiful, and the movie is 80s cheese in a good way. Being from NYC, this movie resonates with me way more than Breakin'. As you describe the plot, the movie sounds ridiculous, which I guess is like most musicals, but I love it. Great review and spot on with the idea that this is a Christmas film. The director did a ton of Cosby Show episodes and I believe is Sanaa Latham's dad. The opening scene was filmed in my neighborhood. A lot of fun listening, instant subscriber on both platforms. And thank you, George Henry 1258. I really appreciate the comments. And yeah, it just struck me that this movie was a Christmas movie, and it just brought back a whole lot of memories. So I'm glad you enjoyed the episode. And we also have Mike Crespo M2C, and he wrote, awesome episode, awesome movie commentary, heart. Thank you Mike Crespo -12C. I really appreciate the sentiment. I hope to keep bringing great episodes for your listening pleasure. Oh, and one more announcement I have to make. As you no doubt noticed, once again, the podcast is late. It's not as frequent as I wanted it to be. There are certain things that are going on that are posing significant challenges to me being able to put the podcast out on a regular schedule. And I am doing all that I can to work out these challenges. But in the meantime, I am actually going to be a guest on another podcast. So if you want to hear my thoughts on another film being examined on Black History Month, you can check out Not a Bomb Podcast. And on that show, we will be talking about Hype Williams directed Belly, starring Nas and DMX. I remember seeing that movie a while ago, and I am very interested in doing rewatch to see what that's going to be like. So that episode of Not a Bomb Podcast, it should be coming out February 27th, 26th, 27th, something like that. So I'll definitely be on there, and you can hear our thoughts on the movie Belly and whether or not it deserves to be a bomb or not. And now that we've talked about the opening credits, let's talk about our favorite parts. So in the themes of this movie, I think that it could be best put in the opening thesis of the film that was narrated by Ahmad, and this whole family drama is kind of seen through the eyes of Ahmad. This, I guess he's like 12 or 13 years old. And in the opening of the movie, he said, family pulling together in times of need will make it strong. The things that pull us together and the things that tried to pull us apart. And this is something that was said by Big Mama, or his Big Mama. And I think that pretty much sums up the whole movie. The trials and tribulations that our family goes through and the things that they go through in order to try to bring themselves back together. What's also interesting about this movie is that it centers on the women in the family. The women are the strongest components in the family. They're kind of the movers and the shakers. So over the overarching family, you have Big Mama. And then after that, you have her daughters. You have Terry, who's a very strong-willed person and also the biggest earner in the family. And you have Maxine, and Maxine is kind of like, she is noted as being the strongest sister, like the strongest woman behind Big Mama, who can influence her other sisters and their husbands. and she's also very strong-willed. And because both her and Terry are strong-willed, they're often butting heads. And that's one of the things that Big Mama is trying to, well, she's sort of the referee in their fights. And she can also kind of negotiate with them and calm them down and bring them back together. And then there's Bird, who is basically, I mean, Bird just wants to keep the family together. She's really pro-family, right? She's whenever there's a situation where there seems to be a fracture, Bird wants to be the person that mends it together, that makes it better. So she does that between her and her husband, and she tries to do it for the greater family. And then you have their husbands, and they just sort of kind of follow along with what their wives are doing. Although, most notably, Lim is the most resistant to following his wife's lead, because of all the men in the film, he is the most prideful. But the other men, even though the men tend to do their own things, and then when the men tend to go their own way, they tend to kind of break up with their wives. And we sort of see this with Miles. It's like you see him kind of going his own way from what his wife wants to lead them to. And this sort of leads to him breaking up with his wife. But the other husbands, like Lim and Kenny, even though Lim is very resistant, he sort of follows along with his wife, and Kenny follows along with his wife, and they tend to stay together. That seems to be what is happening. But I just thought that it was kind of remarkable that in a film about family, when you have husbands and wives involved, that it seems that the women are really taking the leadership roles in this movie. What's great about this movie is that it opens up with a song for Mama, and that's a song written by Babyface and sung by Boyz II Men. It's one of my most favorite songs of all time. So I have to say that's one of my favorite parts of this movie, because it introduced me to that song, and I absolutely love that song. I listen to it often, continue to listen to it to this day, always trying to sing it, never fully succeeding. And it's just a great song. What's also neat about the opening scene is like this is a scene where they're showing the credits, is that they're showing kid pics of all of the main actors. So you see kid pics of Vivica A. Fox, Vanessa Williams, and Nia Long, and Michael Beach, Mekhi Phifer, and even Brandon Hammond, even though he's still a kid himself, and the other actors, and all of them as children. And I thought that was an interesting touch in how they opened this movie. And then one of the early scenes that I wanted to take note of is that it opens up on Bird's marriage to Lim, and they're dancing at the marriage. Bird, this is the reception. Bird has a wedding dress on, and she has money pinned to her wedding dress. And I guess there's a tradition where they're gifting the marriage couple with money, which is not unusual. But the way they express this gift is that they pin money to the wedding dress, which is wild. That's I'm like, where did they do that tradition? I have never seen that. And I mean, admittedly, I hadn't been to a bunch of weddings, but in the weddings that I've been to, I've never seen that done. I mean, I've even seen the husband and wife jump over the broomstick. I've seen that at least one time, but I've never seen money being pinned to the bride. So I think that's wild. This is also an early scene where we're introduced to one of the major players in the movie. This is Bird's ex-boyfriend, and when he comes, we're not sure if he's invited or not, but he comes to the wedding, and he gives, you can see that he's like financially successful, and he gives Bird a bunch of money, and instead of pinning it to her dress, he trying to be slick and puts it in her bra, while her husband is distracted by his own ex getting entirely too freaky on the dance floor. And what's interesting about Lim, the new husband, and dancing with his own ex getting entirely too freaky is that it's almost like a false, what do you call it? It's almost like a false foreshadowing, and that it seems that to foreshadow that Lim is going to do something like wild and out of pocket. I mean, in a way he does, but it's not infidelity, but it leads you to think that that's what's going to happen. And so I thought that was an interesting story element. But the real problem is going to come with Bird's ex-boyfriend, because apparently he's still pining after Bird. And even though Bird is getting married, he's going to do whatever he can to try to break her marriage apart so he can have Bird for himself. So he's very devious in that way. That's why he showed up. That's why he's sticking money in her bra all inappropriately next to her chest, so just and Bird is not amused by this display. And so he does what he does and he leaves. Also early in the movie, they show like montages of the family dinner. That's like the center of their, I think that's kind of like where they get their strength from. This family dinner that they have every Sunday at Big Mama's house. And in one of the family dinners that they're having, well, I guess, what you call it? They're in the kitchen and Ahmad is, having a conversation with Big Mama Joe, and he leaves a cloth or a towel on top of the oven while the oven is on. And, Big Mama has to admonish him, talking about, don't leave a cloth on top of the stove. That you burn the house down doing that. And this is the real foreshadowing. We're going to see that pop up later on in the movie. This is the Chekhov's gun. You have a cloth and Ahmad's apparent negligence that's going to be the Chekhov's gun of this movie. So during the early scenes, you see examples of like Maxine and Terry like blowing up and getting into fights because they're both strong-willed, and you see how Big Mama basically calms them down and keeps them together. She's settling disputes. She's the United Nations of the family, and how she solved her own problems, and how she kept the family together, and how she's encouraging the family to be together so they can accomplish things. Like, you can't accomplish things if you're separated, but you can accomplish a lot of things if you combine together. And whether they hear her or not is unclear. but they are respectful to their mother, so they calm down. But that, some of that, I think, resentment comes from the fact that Terry had a boyfriend one time, and Maxine is like, Terry couldn't go on a date with her boyfriend by herself. She always had to take her younger sister, Maxine. It also happens that Terry's boyfriend and Maxine kind of like each other. And next thing you know, Terry's boyfriend cheats on Terry with Maxine, and Terry actually catches them. And then later on, Maxine actually marries Terry's boyfriend, and that happens to be Kenny. So I think there's some simmering resentment that Maxine stole her boyfriend. And she's also kind of cold. I'm talking about Maxine, not Maxine, I'm sorry. And I'm talking about Terry. Terry is kind of a cold person. Like, she's not extremely affectionate. And so I believe that having her heart broken in this way caused her to build a kind of wall around her heart, where she's not the most affectionate person. She's more about calculation and dollars and cents. She's a high-powered lawyer. So she's more of a lawyer than she is a human being. She's more about facts and statistics and evidence than she is about any of the emotional aspects of what it means to be a person. And I think that the sisters, Terry and Maxine, they get their stubbornness from Big Mama herself, because Big Mama, she's also, she's getting up in age. She's getting sick. And because she's getting sick because she has diabetes, and she doesn't want to take the medicine for diabetes, and she doesn't want to watch her diet. And it's like, the medicine for diabetes is insulin. So it's not like you're getting some weird, outrageous chemical that you have to feed yourself. It's insulin. Insulin is something that your body is supposed to make, and people with diabetes can't make a right amount of insulin to regulate the sugar in their body. So you have to take it externally, and you have to take it carefully, and it has to be monitored. And for whatever reason, Mama Joe doesn't want to take insulin or any other medication. And she's thinking that, well, all she needs is herbs and turpentine. Herbs and turpentine? You want to fix your disease with herbs and turpentine? It's like, that's all you need for all of your diseases? I don't know. I think you need more than herbs and turpentine when you're dealing with some of these advanced diseases like diabetes, or like, say, if you have celiac disease, or like if you have some sort of cancer. Like, you're going to need more than herbs and turpentine. So she's serving in that way. Big Mama Joe is kind of an anti-vaxxer. So now I don't know if for real she's an anti-vaxxer. She probably got her kids vaccinated, and she probably got vaccinated, but there's some people that are just stubborn about going to the doctor. And then later on, the doctors talk about, well, they're going to have to cut her leg off because the disease has gotten so advanced, and she's resistant to having her leg cut off. Like, she's like, ain't nobody cutting off my leg. But then later on, she kind of she relents, and I think because she's facing the reality of the situation, so she goes to surgery to have her leg cut off, but then there's complications during the surgery, and she goes into a coma. either she goes into a coma or they have to induce a coma because she had a stroke. Another one of my favorite parts of this is how it's one of the few genuinely funny moments in the movie. So, because like some people like to call this like a comedic drama, but I didn't see a whole bunch of like comedy elements that you would normally associate with a comedy in this movie. It's mostly a drama, but there's this one moment where Lim loses his job and he wants to have a conversation with Kenny about like basically getting advice of what he should do about it. And Kenny is Maxine's husband. So Lim is like, what am I going to tell? What am I going to tell Bird? I need to tell Bird that I lost a job. And Kenny's like, no, don't do that. Don't tell Bird that you lost. Like, you can't be a man sitting around a house, right? A woman can lose her job. A woman can sit around a house, but a man can't sit around a house. So Kenny gives Lim some money to tide him over, to help him look for jobs. And then Kenny says that he's going to go ahead and ask around to see if he can find somebody to help him get work. But under no circumstances should he tell Bird that he lost his job. So the way that scene plays out, it was just very funny, and it was good for lightening up the film. And moments like this are needed because, like I said, there's a lot of heavy drama. There are a lot of fights. And another one of my favorite things is how Terry and Maxine are always butting heads. And one of the major ways that they butt heads is that after Big Mama's in her coma, Terry starts to make plans for a family dinner, like the Sunday dinner that they always have. And Maxine thinks that the situation is like too serious to have a family dinner. I think that in her mind, they can't have a Sunday dinner without Big Mama because it's basically Big Mama's thing. And Terry's thought process was, and also by extension Bird, because like I said, Bird is the type of person that wants to try to heal the family, that they both believe that they should honor their mother by going ahead with the Sunday dinner. Is something that she would want. She would want the family, the Big Mama would want to be the family to be together. But Maxine doesn't see it that way. They have this big fight in the room where Big Mama is trying to recover from having a stroke. And the doctors had to throw them out because they were getting loud and obnoxious, and because there are other patients on that floor. You can't be fighting when people are trying to recover from disease. And so because of this fight, now Terry is out of sorts, and she doesn't want to make the dinner, and Maxine never wanted to make the dinner in the first place. So that just leaves Bird. Bird is the only one that actually stays in Big Mama's house, and Bird and her husband. So Bird attempts to make the family dinner by herself, but she's not very good at it. So she makes the food, but nobody actually comes. So it's just her and Lim, and I think the preacher shows up. I can't remember, but it's like hardly anybody comes. Another one of my favorite parts is the band Milestone. Milestone was a band that was made up for the show, for the movie. And it's made up of some of the greatest singers of that time. Some of the greatest bands of the 90s. Basically a combination of Jodeci and After 7 and Babyface. So this was a treat. And they sang a song called I Care About You. And I had talked about that when I talked about the soundtrack. And yeah, just a fantastic song. A song that I still listen to today. And to see them all in, it's like, it feels improbable. It feels improbable that you would have four great singers and a piano player form a band together. But I think at the time, actually it's like six of them, because it's like you have two people from After 7, the two guys from Jodeci, and then you have Babyface. So that's already five. And then you had the Miles, the actor, and he's fake like he's playing the piano. So that's 6 of them. So that's a pretty huge group. But then again, in the 90s, groups were everywhere, bands were everywhere. It was du jour. It was the thing to do. If you were a singer, you would just find a bunch of other dudes and you would have a band. I hesitate to call them boy bands because a lot of these were grown folk. But yeah, and I think it was hearkening back to the way that music was made, like back in the 60s and the 70s. There were a lot of singing groups as opposed to singular artists back then. And the 90s was kind of following that model, I think. But nowadays, I feel like there are not as many singing groups, but then again, I'm not really in tune to today's music as I was when I was growing up. So I don't really know what is going on as much, but it doesn't seem to me like, from the little scraps of new music that I am able to listen to, it doesn't seem like there are a whole lot of bands, boy bands or singing groups like there was back in the 90s. But Milestone was, it was an incredible group. Sing a great song. I'm surprised they didn't try to sing a couple of more songs, that there was only one song that they sung for the film. But them being on stage and singing that song, that was definitely one of my favorite parts. And this was part of the Miles storyline. So really Miles and Faith, because Miles and Faith they're working closely together. There was another part of the film where Miles helped Faith get a dancing audition because she's trying to engage in a dancing career. And Faith is like a flighty character. It's like she's not well liked by the sisters. She's kind of transient. And then wherever she goes, she seems to cause a ruckus, or she causes trouble. And so they look at her with suspicion. She's a cousin, right? So she's I guess one of their aunt's daughters or something like that. I'm not exactly sure of the relation, except that she's their cousin. And they're not entirely fond of her because, as I said, trouble seems to follow her. So she's actually staying with Miles and Terry. Terry actually warns her one time, like, not to start any ruckus, not to start no crap. And Miles and Faith they're getting to know each other, they're helping each other out, they're encouraging each other. Faith is actually giving Miles the love and support that he's not actually getting from his wife. 'Cause, like, Terry doesn't want to visit Miles when he's rehearsing. She doesn't want to visit him when he's playing at a club. Miles wants to quit his job as a lawyer and become a musician full time. And Terry doesn't think that's a good idea, and she is discouraging it. Whenever Miles wants to take out like his own money in order to like put out a CD or something, like, or do something for his band, like the band is at least at the time, in a time frame, is kind of like a hobby, and he's thinking about transitioning to be a professional for a time. So he's taking out some money from the joint account in order to help his hobby along as a singer. And like, she's like noting the deficit in the bank account, and she wants to tell him, and she tells him that, only this amount of money is yours and this amount of money is mine. And he said, yeah, it's my money. I shouldn't have to ask you for permission to take out my money for my hobby. And he almost wants to have a separate bank account so she's not hounding him about what he does with his half of the money. It's like he's not feeling the support, even when they're alone in the house and he wants to dance with Terry. She doesn't want to dance. She's kind of like stiff and kind of emotionally distant. Faith is almost like fulfilling that role, and you can see the chemistry start to develop between Miles and Faith. And this is all bad because, like I said, trouble follows Faith, and it doesn't seem like Miles is heeding the notion that faith is bad news. He has to feel those vibes coming off the sisters and coming off of his wife, but apparently he's not feeling that. So going back to another part of the movie, another storyline, this is Bird and Lem. So Bird eventually finds out that Lem is out of work. So she knows that she wants to help Lem get work. And when she finds out that he's out of work, it's like, they start arguing because Lem is extremely prideful. So he doesn't want her help getting work. He is convinced that he can get work on his own. He doesn't want her to do anything to help him. And he wants to be left to his own devices to get work. But Bird is determined that she's going to help her man get a job. So she wants to do it surreptitiously. So what she actually ends up doing is breaking down, and she's going to ask her ex for a favor. She's going to ask her ex to help get Lem a job. And the problem with asking her ex is that her ex is problematic. Her ex is the same dude that wanted to take a wad of money and put it by her titty at the wedding, right? He's problematic. He's trying to break her up from her husband. And I don't think he's doing it out of love or that he wants her back. I think he wants to do it just to show that he has power over her, or she wants to give her the feeling that she can't live without him. At one point in the film, he kind of visits her at her beauty salon unannounced, and he wants to give her a gift. And he's like, yeah, your man can't give you a gift like this. And it's a very expensive gold bracelet. And she accepts the gifts, but she tells him to leave. I think it's like she doesn't see any harm in accepting the gift, but she tells him to leave. And then she finds herself in a situation where she has to ask him for a favor. And they don't explain what she has to do, like what her end of the bargain is. You don't really find out about that, at least not initially, but he actually agrees to help her get her husband a job. And it has to be done in a way where her husband doesn't know. He has to think. Lem has to think that he got the job on his own. So it ends up happening. He ends up getting the job. It's actually a job in an area where he's experienced in. It's in a print shop at I guess it's some kind of publishing house or whatever. And he's good at his job. He's doing the work faster. He's a hard worker. He's dedicated to the work. He's trying to prove himself. And remember, Bird's ex is kind of a bastard. And I won't even dignify him with naming him. But like while Lem is on break at this new job, Bird's ex comes down, and like he's in upper management, so he's coming down to I guess like he's visiting the work folk and or the labor of the company. And he goes down to the break room and he sees Lem and he's starting a conversation with Lem. And then he starts to say very inappropriate things about Lem's wife because, he's hinting at Lem that, oh yeah, they used to know each other. They used to hang out. That used to be his girl, because apparently Bird's ex used to know Bird a while ago. And he's kind of hinting at this and bringing it up with Lem, and it's like making Lem feel uncomfortable intentionally. He's triggering Lem. He's like being a troll before the term troll was popular. And finally, he says something to Lem to set him off, and Lem like whacks him a couple of times and sets him down and knocks him down on the ground. Like he doesn't like fully beat him up, but he punches him a couple times, knocks him down. And then Bird's ex just laughs like, yeah, you fired, motherfucker. Ah, you fired. And how you think you got this job? Bird told me to get you this job. I got you this job. Ah. And so now Lem is once again unemployed. He get fired from the job that he just got. And then and at the same time finds out that he didn't get the job on his own like he thought. it was something his wife helped to get, which he asked her not to do. So now he's hot. He's upset. He goes over to her beauty salon and he's arguing with her, yelling and screaming at her. They go into the back room and he slams her against the wall, telling her not to try to help him. He don't want to see her no more. And then he goes off. And this is problematic. It's problematic because of the messaging in the film. I don't like how this is portrayed or how this is forgiven, because by all rights, this is intolerable in today's world. We can't stand on men beating up on women. And because the movie wants to forgive Lim, but it's like his actions, I feel, are unforgivable. Like, you can see Bird forgiving Lim, especially because I think it was around this time that Bird finds out that she's pregnant. I don't know if it's before the attack. No, I think it's after the attack. It's way after the attack that she finds out that she's pregnant. But it's still wild. It's still like a horrible situation. But it's a situation where Bird forgives Lim, but we see that all the time. We see abuse victims forgiving their abusers. But I feel like the whole family will eventually forgive Lim. And it's, I don't know. It feels wrong. It feels like Lim should face more consequences. And initially he does, because they find out that she was attacked by Lim, but they think it's way worse. They think that he really smacked her around. And so Terry decides she's going to call some more cousins, but these cousins are from the streets. And so they track down Lim at a bar. Lim had not gone home. I guess he was just wandering the streets, and he ends up at a bar. And they track him down, and they start harassing Lim, and then they start to fight Lim, or attempt to fight Lim. But he's good on his feet. It's like three of the dudes, and he starts taking them on. And then just before it looks like they might get the upper hand, he pulls out his gun, because he has a gun the whole time. And, he's like, what now? What? Now what? Right. Because now he got the upper hand because he got a gun. For whatever reason, the cousins didn't think to bring a gun. But then the police show up, because as the fight was breaking out, somebody calls the police, and the police come just in time, and they catch Lim. And so they arrest everybody involved. And because Lim is an ex-con, he ain't supposed to have a gun. So now he's in super duper trouble. He's going to jail. He might never get out. And so going back to the storyline between Miles and Faith and Terry and that whole situation, this is probably one of the most impactful moments of the film. It's the most infamous moment of the film. It's like the one that kind of lives in my memory. And so this is Miles and Faith, and they're kind of having a heart-to-heart talk, basically about their careers and their dreams and aspirations and those type of things. And they really gel together because they're both artists. They're both creatives. Faith expresses herself through dance, and while Miles expresses himself through music. And it's almost like they're speaking the same language. They're both critiquing each other, and they're encouraging each other. And then after this heart-to-heart, Miles says, okay, that's a good talk. I'm go up to the studio. He's going to work on some of his music. And then Faith follows him up to a studio, and then she starts to put the mojo on him. And then they start filling up each other. And it don't take long for them to be doing the deed. They start getting it in. They start having sex. I meant to say it like that. And not just regular, ordinary sex. They're having, it's like they're having sex in a standing position. They're doing some real Kama Sutra set. They're doing something fancy. And it's like right around this time this happens. This is when Terry comes home. I guess she's coming home. I'm not sure if she's coming home early or what, because you would think that Miles would have the timetable down of when he could expect Terry home so that he wouldn't get caught. So it seems to me that Terry must be coming home early. And so Terry is with Ahmed, because Ahmed visits every once in a while. So they come in the house and they're like, I wonder where Miles is. And Ahmed was like, oh, he's probably in the studio. Let's go visit him in the studio. And so they start to go up to the roof to visit Miles in the studio. And they're like, Terry and Ahmed are talking. And Terry is ahead of Ahmed. And she gets to the roof first. And she's sort of blocking Ahmed's view. And she gets to, and at the roof is the entrance to the studio. And it's a huge window. They got blinds, but the blinds are open. So it's a huge window, and she sees everything. It's like Miles' back is to her, and Faith's eyes are closed because she's completely enjoying the moment. And she sees that Miles is putting in work. I mean, with extraordinary sex. It's like almost the type of sex that would cause her to be jealous, because it's like she has not been sexed like that in a long time. And she sees Miles and he's putting in work, and she immediately has to make a decision. Amazingly, I guess because she has an analytical mind, she doesn't crash out immediately because she has this boy with her, and she knows that she can't allow this boy to see what's going on. So instead of crashing out right away, she lets them finish, and she turns Ahmed around, and she said, we got to go. We got to get out of here. We got to go. And she said, and Ahmed is confused. He doesn't understand why all of a sudden they not going to visit Miles in the studio. And then he narrates the film every once in a while. And in this part of the narration, he says, I don't know why Aunt Terry was angry. She seemed angry and tense as she took me home. But he would sooner find out. As far as Miles and Faith are concerned, they finished, but they got that. Like, Miles has this shame look on his face, like this face of ultimate shame and embarrassment. He doesn't know that he's been caught, but he's got that. He's like a combination of guilt and shame on his face after doing the deed, after finishing the task, after that moment of bliss. He's immediately ashamed of what he's done. And not Terry, but Faith kind of has a look of guilt as well. They both know that they did something that they ought not have done. And they both got that shame look on their faces. And that's one of the most impactful moments of this movie. Anybody who watches this movie will remember that part. This all comes to a head at the 13th wedding anniversary for Maxine and Kenny. So you'll remember Kenny was also once a boyfriend of Terry. So now she's at this anniversary, and the whole family is there. It's a party. It's like they got a wedding cake, or an anniversary wedding cake. And this is at this is at Maxine's house, and everybody's having a good time. And like I said, everybody's there. So Faith is there, and she's dancing like she didn't just have sex with Miles. Miles is there, but he's sullen. He's got kind of a guilt about him. Like, it's the air of guilt about him, but he's trying to hide it. And Terry is there, but she's a mess. Like, she's someone who is distraught. You can see the anguish that she's going to, because everybody that has wronged her are in this house at this moment. Like her sister, her ex-boyfriend, her husband, and her cousin. They're all there at this party. Everybody's having a good time. And she's dealing with life. Life is hitting her in her face right now. But everybody else seems to be having a good time. And then the sisters go into the kitchen, and some of the husbands, they go into the kitchen, and that's because Maxine's she's getting everybody together because Big Mama is still in a coma. And they got to figure out what they're going to do about her medical bills. And Maxine's plan is like, well, Terry, you go ahead and pay for it up front. You and Miles pay for it up front. And the rest of us is just going to have to pay you back. And Terry is like, why should I have to pay for it? I got to pay for everything. Why don't we just sell the house? And Maxine's like, we can't. And some of the sisters like, well, there's only one other sister. It's like, but even, I think some of the husbands chime up. So it's like Bird and Maxine, they're like, we can't sell the house. The house is for the family. This is Big Mama's house. We can't sell the house. It's for the family. And this is one of my favorite parts of the film. It's one of the most impactful scenes in the movie. It's one of the most emotionally charged scenes in the movie. Because this is where the dam breaks. This is where Terry can't take it no more. This is where she's tried to hold it together as much as she could. And now she can't. She's done. So this is where she has her outburst. She's like, fuck this family. This family fucked my husband. And they're looking at her in shock. She said, yeah, that's right. Faith fucked my husband. And Miles is there. And Miles is in shock as well. It's like he's got a gaping mouth. He's wide-eyed. He can't believe that he's been found out the whole time. I don't know how many days it's been between when he committed this act of infidelity and when this anniversary party is. He probably felt that he was getting away with it for a couple of days. But then his wife has this outburst and he's in shock. The whole family is in shock. They're just looking at her like wide eyes and gaping mouth. And then I think she kind of walks out of the room and now their family is kind of distraught once again. So this is, like I said, it's a very impactful film. It's like, besides the milestone scene is one of the things. It's like the three things that I remember about this movie, with like from watching it 10 years ago before I did the rewatch. It's the milestone scene where you had the singing group together, and that's so impactful because you had all of these superstars from the time, from the 90s. It's the sex scene between Miles and Faith. That's very impactful. That'll stick in your head. And then it's Terry's outburst. This family fucked my husband. That's incredible. That's impactful. It's like, I was in shock when it happened. The other thing about this scene is that Armada's going in and out of the kitchen. And because the sisters are supposed to be just talking about something mundane, I don't think he was really paying attention to what they were talking about. And he happened to be in the kitchen when Terry has her outburst. And before, where he didn't know why Aunt Terry was so angry when she escorted him out of the house and took him home, now he knows. Now he knows why Aunt Terry was so angry. Like he's not confused about it anymore. So I guess a few days later, you have Ahmed and he's visiting Big Mama, and Big Mama wakes up and she's so glad to see him. And especially the fact that she wakes up and he's the first person that she sees. And for whatever reason, he's the only person there. And, they have a little heart to heart. He talks about how bad the family has fallen without her guidance. And she encourages him to be strong. One of the things that she says is, if you let the bad things stop you, you won't be around for when the good things happen. And then there's something else she wants to tell him. But then she starts to have a problem breathing. And she stops. She's not able to tell him what she wanted to tell him. And then the doctors come in and they try to resuscitate her. And Big Mama passes. And the thing about this is like the emotion between Big Mama and Ahmed. It's like Brandon Hammond, he's basically fantastic at this moment. And he's incredible at transferring his emotion. They really found the right little boy to play this role. And it must be hard to find the right child actor to carry on certain film roles. But he did a fantastic job at carrying this film, because this is really, to have a little boy carry a film, that's a tall order. And the way he carried this film was magnificent. And it's not easy, I think, finding the right young actor to basically carry a film. You have some instances like the one I think of immediately is Macaulay Culkin, of course, especially with the Home Alone series, and some of the other movies that he's carried, and then there are some other child actors that did fantastic work, and then there were some that did not do so well. It's like it would have been great if the casting director or the director and the producers that they chose the right child to carry a movie. It must be very difficult. But Brandon Hammond was the exact right person for this movie, to carry this movie. He was the exact right person for this moment. So there are a couple of things that happen after Big Mama passes. One of the things is that Uncle Pete he starts to come out of his room. So one day Maxine comes to Big Mama's house, and I guess she's putting certain things in order. And she sees, by the way, that Terry had already put a for sale sign in front of the house. And so she goes into the house and she sees that Uncle Pete was downstairs. And Uncle Pete starts talking to her. He starts talking to her like she's somebody else. So she's trying to communicate him, because Uncle Pete, he's on the spectrum, or he has some mental issues. And that's why he stays in his room all the time. But when he comes downstairs, he starts to talk to Maxine, and they're kind of communicating, but he's looking at her and through her at the same time. And it seems as though he's talking to her, and at the same time, he's talking to somebody else, because he's calling her by somebody else's name. And it's almost like he knows that Big Mama had passed. And then the other thing that happened is that Ahmed wants to carry on Big Mama's legacy. And a big part of that legacy was the Sunday dinner. And he knows that the family is fractured. He really wants to put the family to at least get them together. So his big idea is to basically lie to them about an inheritance that Big Mama told him about. Now, Big Mama was trying to tell him something, but she never told him. Well, she was never able to tell him anything. So now he's going to lie and say that, because he was the only one there when she passed. So he's going to lie to each family member and tell them that Big Mama had this huge inheritance and that they had to come to the house. And he tells them to be at the house on Sunday at a certain time. Each of them thinks that they're being invited to the house singularly, but then at the appointed time, as they get there, there are other family members there, and they start to realize right away that they've been hijacked, right? Especially Faith. Faith almost doesn't come into the house, but then Ahmed, like, he kind of begs her to stay in the house. So the scheme basically worked. He lies to his family members about there being an inheritance, and they all come, and he convinces them all to stay. They made Sunday dinner. The sisters made the Sunday dinner as he had intended, and they're basically eating in silence, right? It's not like it's basically a flip version of the beginning of the film. In the beginning of the film, they're eating and they're chatting and they're laughing, and they are and arguing. They're having like a living family. And then there's also a montage of them having subsequent dinners or I don't even know what you would call this. I guess it's a supper. Subsequent Sunday meals. This particular meal that Ahmed had conned the family into coming to is completely silent. You can just hear the silverware scraping on the plates. It's very tense. And also, he's also able to get Lim to come to the dinner. And Lim was let out of jail because Terry called in a favor. So Terry apparently is a personal friend of the district attorney. She was able to convince the district attorney to drop the charges, and so they let him out of jail because she's that kind of lawyer. She's got that kind of pull. And so now Lim is there, and it's still tense, and they all start to wonder like what's really going on. And after some prodding from his mother, Maxine, Ahmed admitted that he had lied about there being an inheritance, that there was no money. He just wanted the family to be together. He said, and then he starts to cry because he said, y'all messed up the family. It was y'all who broke up the family, and he was trying to put it together. Actually, during this time, while everybody's fixing the dinner, like before everybody actually got, sitting down, people are going in and out of the kitchen. And Ahmed was the last person to come out the kitchen. He had left a cloth or a towel on the stove. And this was foreshadowed in the beginning of the movie. So now we're at the end of the movie, and the cloth that apparently he can't stop leaving on the stove actually catches on fire. And so while he's confessing that he lied about the inheritance, and then he's admonishing the family for breaking up the family, that's when people start noticing that there's something wrong with the kitchen. They go in and there's this huge fire on the stove. And so now the whole family has to get together to fight this fire. Lim tries to throw water on the fire, but that doesn't work. That only makes it work because it's a grease fire. and so, somebody in the family had the foresight to have fire extinguishers. So they were able to use the fire extinguishers to put out the fire. And then at that moment, Uncle Pete comes downstairs and he's carrying the television that he watches all the time. And as he's carrying the television downstairs, they're spooked because most of the family had not seen Uncle Pete in a long time. There are probably some members that have never seen Uncle Pete. So he's walking downstairs with this box television. Because if you don't remember, that our televisions were giant boxes. His television wasn't that big, but it was still a huge box. And he's carrying it downstairs. And when he comes out, when he comes into the kitchen making this bunch of noise, it startles, I think he startles Kenny. Kenny has one of the fire extinguishers. He just starts to shoot Uncle Pete with this fire extinguisher. And Uncle Pete drops the TV being shot with the fire extinguisher. And the TV breaks apart and a bunch of money falls out. It was no actual electronic parts inside the television. It was literally just a box with the electronics pulled out. And inside, in place of the electronics, was a bunch of money, just a bunch of dollar bills, and the money starts flying over the place. And then the family kind of starts to celebrate. I think at two things. One, that there's a bunch of money that can kind of alleviate some of the tension that's going on in the household. And the other is to see that Uncle Pete had basically come out of a shell. Uncle Pete had come downstairs, and the family is able to celebrate Uncle Pete coming to join them and this bunch of money that he happens to bring downstairs. And then the family basically moves on. Terry and Miles, they obviously get a divorce, even though for whatever reason, Terry still comes by for Sunday dinner. And the family, but besides that, the family basically carries on from there. And that's kind of the end of the movie with, I guess, discovering a bunch of money. and the family heals over time. And that's Soul Food. It's a fantastic movie. It's filled with drama and emotion and some fantastical things happening. And it was just a joy to watch again. I hadn't seen it in such a long time. But during this rewatch and reliving some of these things that have happened, I'm reminded of just what a great movie this is. And I'm curious to find out what some of your favorite parts of this movie was. Did I hit on some of your favorite parts? Were there some parts that I didn't touch on that you wanted to express about why those parts were great? Why don't you hit me up on the email? It's in the show notes, friends@backlookcinema.com. And that's it for our favorite parts. And now let's talk about the trivia. As you know, I got pretty much all of this trivia from IMDb. The first bit of trivia: Vanessa Williams' iconic "The family fucked my husband" scene was improvised. Everyone's reaction was real and genuine. So that worked out extremely well. So I guess they weren't really reacting to Terry. They were reacting to Vanessa Williams' outburst. I guess they were like, wait a minute, that wasn't in the script. So I think the look on their faces was like, wait, that wasn't in the script. That was the look. But it was fantastic. It perfectly captured that emotion. That was well played. I couldn't find out who actually set up the improvisation. I don't know if it was Vanessa Williams by herself, or maybe she got together with the director and they figured out how they was going to finagle this. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but yeah, that emotion, that especially Miles' face, that was priceless. Mekhi Phifer, who played Lim, was at one point married to Melinda Williams, who plays Bird in the cable series. Because this movie was so popular that they actually made a TV series called Soul Food. I never got around to watching it. I think it was on HBO. Apparently, Melinda Williams played Bird. And I think Irma P. Hall, she reprised the role as Big Mama. So I guess it's supposed to be a prequel. I'm not exactly sure. Like I said, I never saw the series. Again, with Vanessa Williams, she was working on the film Hoodlum from 1997 at the same time as this film. Since both movies were being filmed in Chicago, Williams would work both films on different days, which is incredible. She was putting in the work. You would see her a lot in this time period. She was a hardworking woman. She made sure that she was going to put her mark on film and television. Vanessa Williams, Vivica A. Fox, and Nia Long all previously appeared on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as three very different love interests of Will Smith's character. I didn't realize that Vanessa Williams was on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Either I didn't realize or I had forgotten. As a matter of fact, I had forgotten that any of them were on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And then we would see Vivica Fox again as a love interest for Will Smith in Independence Day. Last bit of trivia about Vanessa Williams particularly is that she was actually going through relationship issues, a divorce as it were, as they were filming. Director George Tillman thinks this helped her performance since the character Terry deals with similar issues. So yeah, that'll work. That'll help you deal with the emotional tension. The scene at the beginning of the film where Ahmed and his sister try to get in Uncle Pete's room when he takes his food took half a day to shoot, and the crew was starting to get irritated with director George Tillman since this scene is only 30 seconds. George still didn't like how the final scene came out, and I think that could have been fixed in editing. I don't think that scene was well edited. It did look kind of janky and confusing, but I think this must be a core memory for him. This must be something that he did with his siblings, because he really wanted. I think that he really wanted this particular scene in the movie. The bracelet that Bird's ex gives Bird was actually worth $15,000 at the time. Today, it would be worth about $30,000. So, yeah, Bird's ex had a lot of money. He was very successful in his work. And that's why I think that his character, he wanted to get her back because it was about control. It wasn't about love. Terry and Miles' condo is located in Chicago and was actually built by Christy Hefner, Hugh Hefner's daughter. At the time, it was worth about $5 million. Adjusted for inflation, that would be about $10 million. But by the way the actual housing prices are today, it could probably be worth of $100 million. At the time, it was owned by the men who own a chain of McDonald's. The picture from the end of the opening credits are pictures of George Tillman's actual family. Some of them are his mother as a child. That's a nice personal touch. A lot of the scenes with the three sisters in the bathroom at the wedding was improvised since George Tillman wasn't satisfied with what he had written in the script. They changed Maxine's line from "let's beat that bitch down" to "let's beat that hoe down," since it's supposed to be a more family-oriented movie. But they had a whole ass sex scene in the movie. Admittedly, they didn't show much, but you could see Miles's butt cheeks. I distinctly remember seeing butt cheeks. You saw enough. You saw enough. And also there's a line, "this family fucked my husband." There were a couple of fucks in the movie, so I don't know how you square that with being family oriented. You might as well have left "let's beat that bitch down." You might as well have been in there. So that's it for the trivia. Let's check out what the critics thought. The critics have it at 82%. The audience popcorn meter has it at 86%. On Rotten Tomatoes, and IMDb Reviews has it at 7 out of 10. Lisa Schwartzbaum from Entertainment Weekly wrote, "The steaming platters of fried catfish, macaroni and cheese, sweet cornbread, and black-eyed peas that appear early and often in writer-director George Tillman Jr.'s sentimental family drama should be listed in the credits as co-stars." And I think she wrote that because the food looked just that good. It was like, man, you look at that food, it's like, man, I'm hungry. I'm hungry right now. You could have just ate. You see that, the way the food was laid out, you're like, I'm hungry all over again. The acting that cornbread is doing is almost as good as Vanessa Williams acting. It's like that cornbread is putting in work. Lonnie O'Neill Parker from the Washington Post wrote, "Tasty, but easily forgotten." And I strongly disagree. I hadn't really watched this movie all that much, but you can't forget Miles having sex with Faith, and you can't forget Vanessa Williams shouting, "the family fucked my husband." And like, those were some pivotal moments. And you can't forget Ahmed. Ahmed left an incredible impression. So no, I don't think this is easily forgotten. Kevin Thomas from the Los Angeles Times wrote, "Tillman drew inspiration from his own Milwaukee family, his beloved grandmother in particular. Humor, sentiment, melodrama strike a balance as he brings to life 9 major characters and a host of others as well." And I think that is accurate. And Marjorie Baumgarten from Austin Chronicle wrote, "Soul food is certainly digestible fare, but somewhat lacking in nutritional value." I don't think that is accurate, but that is her opinion. Finally, Soul Food is, as of this recording, available for purchase anywhere you stream movies or where you usually buy physical copies. That's it for this conversation. So join me next time when we get a chance to set this party off right. You're all invited, of course, to come over to my house, boogie down to some classic jams and show off your fly dance moves. I promise that this party will be amazing because there's no party like a house party with kid and play. Join me next time as we get down with the 1990 classic House Party. You can follow us on Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, Instagram, and sometimes Twitter at Backlook Cinema. Please contact us with any questions, comments, or suggestions at friends@backlookcinema.com. Please rate and review on your favorite podcast app. And if you're listening on YouTube, please like or subscribe or leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. One last time, if you like this show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlook Cinema, the podcast. Believe me, it matters. I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe. Share a movie from yesterday with your family. Hug your loved ones. And if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.